Thanks for staying with us. Around 130 suspected illegal miners have been brought to surface in Sabie in Mpumalanga. Now, there are still some who remain underground as the rescue mission continues. While the nation watches in shock the developments in Stillfonten and Mpumalanga, there are concerns about the safety of those who undertake this dangerous mission. Let's speak now to Dr. Adwoa Boaduo, who is a mining engineer, who joins us now this evening. Good evening to you, and thank you so much for your time. So, watching some of what has been taking place, and I'm going to start in Mpumalanga, some of the men who were speaking to our reporter were talking about the dangers that, were posed underground, the fact that some of them claim that they were forced to go underground, without their consent. They had guns to their heads, and they then had to undertake this job. So now when you think about the fact that there are 3 bodies of those who are believed to have died because rocks are suspected to have fallen on them, how much of a danger are those who undertake such missions in?
So, Bongiwe, we start with the fact that 3 bodies have been taken out because rocks have fallen on them, and it is expected because, as I mentioned previously, you don't know what kind of ground support you have. So at Sabie, you've got a shallow mine. I think the depth is less than 200 meters, maybe 160. And here the risk you have is that of falls of grounds. So what happens in illegal mining is we are also mining the pillars that carry the ground above for stability. So when you're mining these remnants, you're removing the natural form of support, which is the rock. So the risk of ground instability is high, and hence you have rocks falling. There's probably no structural support there. It's an ownerless derelict mine that was abandoned a long time ago. So that's one of the biggest risks you can find. There's the security risk as well of the armed illegal miners. There's a risk of ventilation, poor ventilation, and it's a shallow mine. So the biggest risk here is unstable ground and falls of ground.
The fact that someone will mine a pillar, something that should be keeping them safe, speaks of the inexperience as well. Because if one would be experienced, they would not go for this.
Not only the inexperience, it's the desperation, because, I mean, these are pillars that have locked in some remaining gold, and you've got a high gold price, you've got a low capital, a low-cost mining method, you've got a country that's plagued with socio-economic challenges. So this is a lucrative form of livelihood. So it's not much the inexperience, but more the desperation. It's the need for the people to have a source of income. So yeah, that's the primary issue here.
I'm going to get to the high levels of unemployment in just a moment, but there's another article I was reading which also then was a cause for concern for me. Is it true that some of them acquire, for example, dangerous explosives, copper cables, make illegal electricity connections to be able to do this work underground as well?
Oh, yes, it's very much true. We've seen this at some of the large-scale mining operations, and it's some of the security issues that the large-scale mines deal with, the copper theft. And that's why, our large-scale mining companies have got such stringent policies or stringent controls regarding the movement of explosives. But, you still find, the criminal syndicates are always a step ahead. So they find a way of bypassing this. On the news a few years ago, there was a story of in one house in Rustenburg, a hole that was made and theft of copper cables. So it's definitely there. That's 100% accurate.
So what about the methods that they use to refine some of what they find? So
some of the methods they use, it's it could probably be your small scale processing. That is just extracting the gold, probably using chemicals. I suspect there might be a high use of mercury, which is also very dangerous to extract this gold.
And we talk about, the high unemployment levels, because when you speak to organizations that are watching, illegal mining in the country, Makua and Benchmarks Foundations and all of that, they talk about the fact that there's high unemployment levels, but also the failure to close or even secure, effectively these disused mines is also posing a serious threat when it comes to life. But then at the same time, you have people, as you said, who are desperate. So then what becomes the common ground here that can be reached in order for us not to see these fatalities that we continue to see here?
So, Bongiwe, South Africa has a small-scale, artisanal and small-scale mining policy. It's a good policy. I've read it, but I think it highlights all the pillars that are necessary in order for this problem to be managed. It talks about the establishment of a small-scale mining directorate within the DMRE. It talks about improving interdepartmental collaboration, financial assistance, training, skills, and development. So the common ground here is to implement. And government plays a critical role in the enforcement mining legislation, be it the closure legislation, the ASM legislation. We've got 6,100 derelict ownerless mines, approximately. So it's a heavy burden on government, and we need to implement. I think as a country, we are very good at drafting legislation, but when it comes to the implementation, that's where we really need to do better. So the middle ground is we look into the small-scale mining legislation, the reforms that are called for, the policy, implementing this policy and implementing the legislation, perhaps refining it, and also implementing the closure legislation. We also have a high number of mining engineering graduates, geology graduates that are unemployed. How about, setting up some sort of a learning hub and getting their skills to come up with ways of solving this problem, and also delivering on these implementation plans of venture capital companies, financial support, financial assistance for small-scale mines, legalizing and formalizing it to prevent criminal enterprises from hijacking the sector.
And as you say, this particular policy, when one really goes through it, you can see that the vision is there.
Yes.
And really there's a lot of thought that's been put into it. And I suppose if it's implemented, it can resolve some of the issues, like, for example, the license criteria, some of the license requirements as well, the permits, the demarcation of some of the areas, so that we do not find ourselves with all these problems of people mining everywhere and not even knowing who holds licenses. So certainly it will go a long way towards resolving some of those issues.
Most certainly, Bongiwe, most certainly that, and also learning from the international community, aligning ourselves with other countries that have faced similar problems, that have developed solutions, so that we don't repeat mistakes internationally. So 100%, yeah.
All right, let's see then what happens, because, as this operation, we're watching these visuals, that are really showing what was taking place in Mpumalanga. One wonders then what becomes the way forward, because when you speak to the department, they tell you they don't have enough money. They're still trying to do the best they can to close the shafts, but at the same time, you then listen to the fact that this particular policy may now need to be relooked, especially given where we are finding ourselves right now. So let's see how this one unfolds. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. That is Dr. Adwoa Boaduo, who is the mining engineer. And certainly, as this issue of illegal mining is fully in the spotlight, one wonders then, how then do we begin to resolve this once and for all?